Really don't dare to ride roller coasters anymore. One Mindbender. West Edmonton Mall, Canada, 1986. On the night of June 14th, 1986, under the mall's neon glow, the steel wheels of Mindbender screeched through the indoor air like a saw. The triple loop train ripped out of a corkscrew and climbed the rise before the final loop. Then a different sound came from the rear car. Clang. Rattle. A wheel assembly that keeps the car guided/locked to the track had worked loose and began to shake. Seconds later, the rear car tilted, scraped a beam, and derailed at speed. Momentum dragged the rest of the train forward. The tail skewed and slammed into a yellow structural column. In that instant, the restraint system no longer held bodies in the right position. The violent deceleration threw some riders out of the car's path, while others were pinned and crushed inside the seat frames. The concrete floor answered with a choked metal thud and then an eerie hush. The victims suffered multiple high-energy trauma, severe head injury, major chest and abdominal injury, traumatic shock, and near-instant cardiac and respiratory arrest. 3 riders died. Another was critically hurt. At the scene, the last car's shell was twisted. Long silver scrape marks ran along the rail and the column. Seats sat skewed off-axis with their locking hardware exposed, and personal items lay scattered from a height, proof of a chain of hard deceleration, to direction change, to column impact far beyond what a human body can survive. Those ejected came to rest in unnatural positions with no signs of resuscitation possible. Those trapped showed crush and compressive asphyxia as the seat frames and handrails caged the chest, making breathing impossible. The air held the bite of ozone and hot metal, a haze of brake smoke, clipped shouts from bystanders, and over it, the park music kept playing. The investigation later found that a cluster of bolts holding the wheel assembly had fatigued and failed, and maintenance missed the warning signs, allowing the wheel to separate and the car to lose guidance. When the ride reopened, operators made sweeping changes. Fewer cars per train, added secondary seatbelts, anti-derail retainer wheels, and per-shift torque checks on critical fasteners. The most frightening truth of that night wasn't the screams. It was how one small joint turned a machine into a sledgehammer inside a building. One fatigued bolt, one loose turn, one bad second. And the rest is the silence hanging between steel and neon. 2 Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, Disneyland, 2003. On the night of September 5th, 2003, under the fake canyon lights and the howling wind sound effects of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, the mine train crested the lift and dived into a dark tunnel. Then everything went wrong. The front locomotive car, a decorative car that carries no guests, began to shake strangely. A set of guide-os retainer wheels popped out of place. In a heartbeat, the engine lost guidance, jumped up, hit the tunnel roof, then slammed back down right in front of the first passenger car. The cars behind kept pushing forward on momentum, turning the narrow track into a stacked collision with the sound of metal grinding. No flames, no blast, just a sudden stop at a level a human body can't survive. Up front sat Marcelo Torres, 22. His seat took the full crush and shear load as the passenger car drove partly under the engine. The coroner's words are stark. High-energy multiple trauma, severe chest and abdominal injuries leading to internal bleeding. 10 others were hurt to varying degrees as inertia threw and slammed riders into seat frames and car sides. Inside the tunnel, the scene was suffocating. Long steel scrape marks on rails and ceiling. Seats skewed off-axis with their hardware exposed. Debris and personal items scattered below. The investigation found a procedural maintenance failure at the root. A cluster of bolts/pins that secure the engine's guide and upstop wheels had not been torqued and locked to spec. The assembly worked loose, the engine derailed, bounced off the roof, then fell onto the car behind. Afterward, Disneyland acknowledged the error, tightened training and torque spec procedures, added layered pre-opening checks, installed secondary seatbelts, and reviewed anti-derail wheels and fatigue part replacement schedules. The most frightening part isn't the screams, it's how one loose bolt, half a turn short, can turn a whole train into a sledgehammer in a tunnel, and after the choked metal noise, leave only a heavy silence. 3. New Texas Giant, Six Flags Over Texas, 2013. On the hot afternoon of July 19th, 2013, in Arlington, the chain clattered as the New Texas Giant, a massive wood-steel hybrid, climbed to the top. The train floated over airtime hills, then dove into a steep banked turn. In the front row of the middle car, one rider's lap bar didn't lock down snug the way it should. At the crest, a burst of negative G lifted her out of the seat just as the car tilted into the turn. In a single heartbeat, gravity and momentum won. She was thrown over the side, falling from the train into the bright sun and roaring wind. The victim suffered high-energy trauma from a fall, with severe chest and abdominal injuries, multiple fractures and crush injuries, leading to traumatic shock and near-instant cardiac and respiratory arrest. At the scene, the impersonal traces of physics remained. Scrape marks on a support, a point of impact on the ground, personal items scattered. The train, now with an empty seat, running until it reached the station where the car sat in shock and staff hit the emergency stop. The investigation traced a simple but fatal chain. The restraint verification wasn't strict enough for that rider's body shape and seating position. The lap bar didn't apply firm pressure to the thighs, so under negative G plus a banked angle, a small gap became a way out. There were no secondary seatbelts at the time. The system relied on a hydraulic lap bar and a visual tactile check by attendants. After the accident, the park and manufacturer rolled out major changes, added seatbelts at every seat, placed a test seat at the entrance so guests could check fit, updated lap bar padding and shape, required two-person checks, and issued clearer screening guidance for special body types. Only after these layers of protection were in place did the ride reopen. The chilling truth of New Texas Giant is the invisible flip. The same airtime that thrills riders can become an ejection window if the last line of restraint isn't solid. On a coaster, the track is only half the story. The human-to-seat interface is the final guardrail. One lap bar that isn't fully on, one underforce check, one hilltop plus one banked turn, and what follows is silence in the Texas sun, where an empty seat tells the whole story. 4 Big Dipper, Battersea Park, London, 1972. On the afternoon of May 30th, 1972, cheers from the Battersea Fun Fair, mixed with the clack of the Big Dipper as the wooden train climbed the lift by cable. Then the haulage cable slipped and failed. The anti-rollback dogs didn't bite. All 3 cars ran backward toward the station. The brakeman yanked the handbrake, but at the curve into the platform, the rear car jumped the rail, smashed through a wooden barrier, and the 2 cars ahead rode up and stacked in the tight lattice of aging timbers. Metal scraped wood, a roar echoed across the midway, then a choking silence. The victim's post-incident condition followed a brutal pattern: severe head injury and major chest-abdominal trauma leading to traumatic shock and very rapid cardiac and respiratory arrest. Children in the rear car were thrown over the side or pinned under framing. Some who survived the first impact then fell through a rotted emergency walkway, turning a near escape into a fatal drop. On the gravel lay angled skid marks, splinters, and nails, and seat frames skewed off-axis. In all, 5 children died, and 13 were injured. The deadliest roller coaster accident in the UK. The investigation exposed a chilling truth. 66 faults were documented: decayed timbers, missing or ineffective stops, and a rollback brake too weak to hold. Before the disaster, the ride had rolled back without the brake engaging, and the fix was half measures. The ride manager and the certifying engineer were charged with manslaughter, then acquitted at the Old Bailey. But the fair was never the same. Big Dipper was dismantled, attendance collapsed, and the park closed 2 years later. What's most frightening at Battersea isn't the screams, it's the gap between safety layers. A snapped lift cable with no rollback catch, rotten wood standing in for sound structure, and a single emergency move that can't save the day. A family coaster with kids in the front row became a grinding machine because redundancy was ignored. And after the last metallic shriek came the silence of broken timber, where physics speaks louder than any excuse. If you intend to participate in adventure sports, please be very careful and choose places with a high level of safety for your own safety. If anything happens to you, your loved ones will be very saddened.